name's Eric Leuthardt. I'm here in Dallas, Texas. I specialize in email deliverability. And this came about because I have a problem getting my emails delivered and I needed ways to get that resolved. So I've got a lot of good information tonight, a lot of cool things to share. Um, if you've got questions, obviously I love questions. So my email is in the chat window if you want to reach out to me after the fact for anything I don't get through tonight. Let's just get through it. Now, email deliverability, there's a lot of information here. There are a lot of different things to think about. But when it comes to why is our email not being delivered, one of the most common, your domain is on the blacklist or block list somewhere. Now, why is it there? A lot of reasons, and I'm going to talk about a few ways that we can resolve some of these issues. Biggest reasons, the hosting that you're on may not have email hosting, that is, may not have the best mechanisms in place to protect your reputation. But at this being 2020, I guess it is, it's not uncommon that you may end up getting a domain that somebody else owned at one point. You may end up getting a domain that even you owned and you had it going out and you didn't necessarily have all of these different mechanisms in place. One of those mechanisms, anti-spoofing. That's the big piece we're going to talk about tonight. Now, spoofing, that's when somebody else sends email on your behalf, basically pretending to be you. So whenever you get that email that looks like it's from Apple, now obviously Apple is got these mechanisms in place, but when we used to get emails that looked like they were from Apple, that had the Apple domain name on them, PayPal, Amazon, whatever it might be, somebody sending email using your domain. A lot of cool things we can put in place that are all free that we can use to keep our domain from being spoofed. Your website IP being on a blacklist. Buying a dedicated IP for your website is not necessary anymore, but if your email is being hosted via GoDaddy or SiteGround or any other shared hosting, there's a potential that your email server is what's called an open relay. What that means is that somebody can just send email through that server with no authentication required. If you're on shared hosting of your choice, you add a domain and you create an email account and you can send that out without an issue. That's what's called an open relay. The previous owner of that IP address, shared hosting, you're covered by all of the different people that are on that server. So if, let's say you're at GoDaddy, nothing against GoDaddy or any other shared hosting, they're all the same in this case. But if you're on GoDaddy, you've got X number of other websites and customers all using your same IP address to send their email. So your reputation is affected by the worst behavior in that bunch. Now, this last one, this is one that we can absolutely do the most good with. Your domain sending unauthenticated messages. I'm going to talk about how we can stop your domain sending unauthenticated messages and untrusted messages. Now, your domain sending spam, that's more likely to happen if your domain is spoofable. So in the case of my domain, Seventh Circle Designs, if somebody tries to send using my domain, it's going to automatically be marked as junk and thrown away because of the rules that we're going to talk about tonight. So what you want to do is we want to look at all the different pieces we can put together to handle this. One of the major pieces is something called DMARC, domain message authentication. It's a combination of rules that we're going to cover that's going to help you get your email, whether it's that email that your website sends for a password reset, a transactional email for a WooCommerce item, or just you sending me an email asking me a question, or me sending you an email asking you one. Now, one of the things to look at here, the IP address of your domain name. Now, for anybody that's not aware, this is what's called an A record. The A record is the IP address of your domain. This is one of those important pieces that can cause issues. If this IP address is sending spam, has been sending spam, then you want to think about moving your email off of your shared host. Now, it is best practice to always have your email hosted at a company that specializes in email. Now, this is what's called a pointer record. The only time that you can configure a pointer record correctly, where that IP address does a reverse lookup to your domain name, is if you own a dedicated IP address. Now, if you are sending a lot of email, a lot of marketing emails, using companies like SendGrid and Mailgun, you can get dedicated IPs for this that you can then use for this purpose. For your regular email, this is not as important as it used to be. But your email must have 2 email addresses that are monitored and maintained. You should always have abuse and postmaster on your domain. If your domain is sending out spam, people are going to respond to one of these 2 addresses potentially, trying to get that issue resolved. So having these addresses set up is definitely going to be in your benefit. This is part of that opt-out loop. So when you're looking at MailChimp or something similar, they have an opt-out loop. For regular email, the abuse address and the postmaster address are going to be to your benefit. So the first piece that we're going to look at when it talks about the anti-spoofing pieces is something called SPF, or Sender Policy Framework. What it is it is a list of IP addresses or servers or IP ranges that can send email on your behalf. So what it looks like, I'm going to pull this up for you. This is an SPF record. And what it's saying is, these are the servers that can send email on your behalf. This is piece number 1 when you're starting to put together an anti-spoofing mechanism. Now, on its own, SPF does not have a lot of teeth. If somebody sends email, in my case, my email is hosted at Google. If somebody sends email from Microsoft using my domain and I only have SPF set up, it's going to get delivered anyway. Now, the reason for that is because it's a mechanism. It doesn't have any teeth behind it. So what it does, it's a DNS record. When somebody sends that message, it goes through, and the inbound server is going to look at the message, check to see if the SPF information passes. If it passes, it's supposed to be delivered. If it fails, it's not supposed to be delivered. There are different mechanisms here. The -all means it's a hard fail. If it doesn't fall into this range, it should fail. It's not uncommon to see it with a question mark. If your SPF record has a question mark in it, it means ignore my SPF record. Now, the tilde is a soft fail. This says, deliver it anyway. Now, this one is also just like the question mark. If you've got this, it's saying, deliver it from anybody that wants to send email on my behalf. So there's no teeth behind it. So by itself, it is just one piece of this puzzle that we're going to put together today. So what this record is, you can call out whether you want to include your A record, your MX, a specific IP, version 4 or 6, or an include where it includes another SPF record. This record is saying, based on the domain, the A record, the mail exchangers, this IP address, and Google's record. So the A, again, it's going to look at no matter version 4 or 6, mail exchangers, straightforward, IP4 and 6. You can pick whichever one you want. You can add both. The include is the one you're going to use the most, because the include is you're hosting it at Google, Microsoft. You're going to include their SPF record so that they're maintaining the list of all of their IP addresses that should be allowed. More often than not, if you're on shared hosting, that A record, don't even bother adding it, because your mail server is going to be a different IP address than your actual website. So you'll usually end up with an IP4 or a range, depending upon your hosting. Now, each one of these, it gives you options. The plus, the question mark, again, if you've got those in place, it just says basically ignore the rule. There's no purpose for that. Tilde or soft fail, this one is pretty common. It kind of gives you a little buffer in case that SPF fails because you've forgotten to include a server of some type. I personally set the minus or hard fail absolutely whenever I can. There are occasions where you need to skip that. And I'm gonna show you some different settings, some different zone files for different hosting as we get a little further in. So this is Google's default. SPF you're declaring is version 1. Include Google's, hard fail for anything other than Google. But if you need to include, in this case, let's say HostGator, you can include a second record. You have a limit of 15 DNS lookups. So if you include Google and HostGator, you're going to go past your 15 lookups, because HostGator is going to include 10 or 12 on their own, and Google's going to have 6 or 7 of theirs. So there are certain times where you need to look at them and consider which pieces you need to add. If you're doing MailChimp, you can just do an include for MailChimp. So anytime you're setting this up, what you've got to think about is, where are my sending domains? I have a website hosted at this company. I have my email hosted with this company, and I'm doing my marketing through this company. I need to make sure I allow for all of those in my SPF record. That list saying what servers can send on my behalf. If you have a domain that or a subdomain that does not send email, www, the SPF record with nothing in it says no email from this domain, this subdomain will ever be allowed. There are no approved servers. So when you're setting this up, what I would do is I would actually set up a second record. And what that record would be is a simple SPF dash all, so that for the www, there's no sending allowed. When you do a lookup, it's going to look like this. When you embed it in your DNS, you're generally going to depending upon how you're loading it, you may have to put quotes around it. This was a record that I used to use until changes were made, and this got to be a little too large. So DKIM is piece number 2 that we look at when we're starting to do this. What DKIM is this is a digital signature applied to your messages that is then looked up in DNS as a verification. So if you're using Google for your email, there's a digital signature applied to every outbound message. And what it has is there is a response that then gets looked up in DNS. So all of these different pieces rely heavily on DNS. What the record is going to look like in your email is going to be something very similar to this. And what will happen is there will be a response that's going to sit in your DNS. Now, some DNS providers are not going to support the full length of this. If for some reason you know anybody or you are hosting your domain through Wix, even if your website's not there, but if your domain is registered through Wix, their DNS will truncate this and only give you about half of the data. They make this in a couple different key lengths. The current standard, I believe, is 2048-bit. Wix only supports 1024-bit. So what this is going to do is there's several different pieces included in this DKIM information. The first, obviously, the version and the logarithm. These are going to the version is always going to be version 1. The logarithm is almost always going to be RSA. At some point, they may update that to something new. C, or the canonicalization, generally, you're not going to worry about that. If the email host provides something, they'll generate that for you. All the hosts will generate the key that goes into your DNS for you automatically. Now, the domain sending the email. This is the piece that is the important part. This is what ties together with SPF as we start to put the entire puzzle together. That sending domain and the selector. So in the case of this one, the selector is Google, and then the sending domain would be whatever domain this is hosted on. So these pieces are what's going to tie together when you start to see that email. The header field names, generally, you're not going to have this because each different server is going to set its own DKIM key. The body hash, again, something that this is going to be only visible when the email is received. And then the signature data. And that's the piece that's going to be looked up in DNS to compare with the key that you've posted publicly and the private key. Works very, very similar to any other cryptography where you've got a public and a private key that are having to check each other to verify that they are correct. So again, this is the key that's usually posted. This is the lookup piece, and the that Google.domain key or whatever your selector might be is the actual record information. So in the case of this one, this is the domain key on the www subdomain. So I generate a key even on a subdomain that I'm not sending from. I actually just generate a key that will always fail, so that with that SPF record saying no allowed domains and a key that will always fail, it's guaranteed that anybody sending email from that subdomain cannot spoof that domain. This will make a little more sense as we start to look at the final piece that ties all this together. Because DKIM on its own has no teeth. What it is, it's a verification. that the email actually came from your server. So when you go to send that email, your outbound email is going to attach that key. But without a key, there's nothing on its own saying whether or not to accept that email. So several years ago, a lot of the major email providers got together and worked on something that will tie these pieces together and start giving us a way to stop the spoofing. DMARC, domain message authentication, reporting, and conformance. The name itself is irrelevant. What it means is irrelevant. The biggest piece is this is the way that we prevent our email from being spoofed. Google, Microsoft, PayPal. If you were a Gmail user 7, 8, 10 years ago, you used to see that little key in your mailbox next to a PayPal email. That was saying that they were supporting DMARC. That was an early test because they were one of the few people that supported it early on. If more people would use this, we would see less spam, less successful phishing attacks, less successful email spoofing. Again, nice long description that says your host is going to publish a key on every email that goes out, and you're going to put one into your DNS. Combining those two DKIM keys together with a DMARC policy. DMARC is the policy that ties together the two settings. What we're going to do is that policy is going to decide what happens with our email once it arrives. So this is a basic policy. This is saying DMARC version 1, because that's the current version and that's the version we're always going to have. Now, all of these records, they're all text records in your DNS. Policy on this one is reject. There are 3 choices. None, which is monitor only. Quarantine, which is your first step of test, your second step of testing. And then reject. If it fails DMARC, throw it away. Do not deliver it. Do not pass go. And do not collect any kind of penalties for delivering spoofed email. These other pieces are add-ons. So what we've got, RUF and RUA, forensic reports and auditing reports. You have to set them as a mail too. You can collect these. They come in an XML format. I do not recommend you collect them into your own mailbox. I've got a service that I use that I recommend that works great, and it's a great price, and you can put a lot of domains in there. ADKIM and ASPF. Those are the alignment modes, strict or relaxed. The default is relaxed. If you put the equals S, it means strict. So you can leave out ADKIM equals S if you just want to run relaxed mode. ASPF, SPF alignment, if you leave it out, it defaults to relaxed. Now, the policy, this is the policy for the actual domain. If you do not add a subdomain policy, it will also get the full domain policy. So in the case of the record that I've set here, it's saying the full domain and all subdomains will be rejected if they fail. My recommendation, and you'll see why I do this. I set up my full reject policy for the entire system, and then I will call out exclusively a subdomain that might need a different policy. So let's look at DMARC a little bit more here, and then I'm going to pull up a record for you, show you some more record options. This is what a DMARC record looks like when you look it up in DNS. It's going to be _DMARC dot the domain that it covers. In this case, it's saying that it's a full reject, strict alignment, mail the reports directly to me. I know this is a little, this part's a little hard to read, but again, full reject, um, strict alignment. Now we do have options. Again, implicitly selected, the percentage is going to be 100% if you don't call out a different percentage. Um, Unless you've got a major domain, my recommendation is set it to 100% on monitor or quarantine or reject. That way you've got the full effect and you actually get an idea of what's going on. So basically what happens with DMARC is when that email gets received, it should have a digital signature, and the receiving server is going to see that you've got a DMARC policy out there and what you want it to do. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, SPF is in strict alignment. We're going to go out, we're going to verify that the sending server is on the SPF approved servers list. Assuming that passes, it's going to make a weighting determination. It's then going to look at your digital signature. Now, if SPF passes and you have no signature, it's going to deliver your message. If SPF passes and you have a bad signature, it's going to reject the message. Depending on, there are some extra weightings in there, but in general, failed signature, valid SPF, failed message. Failed SPF, valid signature, deliver the message. If both pieces fail, absolutely not deliver the message. So there's pieces in there that are going to look at it and determine whether or not it should be delivered based on your alignment and whether or not individual pieces fail. Now, past is the ideal solution. That's what we want. When you're first setting this up, you set it to none. You collect those reports. You look at those reports and you make sure that you're catching every domain that should be sending, and that it's all aligning correctly. If it aligns correctly, then we move up to quarantine and finally to reject. Now, this is what it's going to look like in your mail. And I'm going to load this for you and make this a little bit bigger. So that should be a little bit easier to see. So what we're looking at is it's saying where the message was delivered, what IP address sent it, what IP address received it. This is going to be standard in every message that you get, whether it's got DMARC or not. Now, the received SPF pass, that's where it starts to look at your DMARC settings. It tells you whether SPF passes or not, whether DKIM passes or not. And assuming everything passes, what's going to then happen is it's also going to look at your DMARC and decide whether or not it should pass or fail. Let me go back, because I clicked a little too quick on you. Right down here, the third line from the bottom, it's actually going to tell you whether or not DMARC passes and what it's doing, whether it's a full reject or a fail or what it might be. Now, if you're a Gmail user, you can go to the triple dots on when you're inside of a message, the triple dots in the upper right-hand corner, and choose Show Original, and it's going to give you information about whether DKIM and SPF passed. So what you can see down here where it says X Google DKIM signature, it's actually showing the signature as applied inside of this message. It's a handy piece to have, but inside of Gmail, you can go in, you can look at this, and you can actually see whether or not things have applied. So let me pull this over. Let me show you some standard settings. So what we're looking at here, this is standard settings for a domain. These are the 3 records that you have to have. You have to have an SPF record calling out what servers send email on your behalf. A DKIM record, which is that signature that it's using. And then a DMARC record, which ties everything together and decides what should be done with that message. Those are the 3 records that we're looking at creating. Now, I've got some suggestions here in a minute. They're going to show you how to create these records, how to create the SPF, how to create the DMARC record. DKIM will be done by your host, your email host. So, suggestions. The way I like to do mine. My primary email domain is one. Then I have transactional email domains. So what I like to do is I will create different domains. So I will have my primary domain, and then I will have my transactional domain. So if I'm running WooCommerce, and I will have one for email marketing. If I'm running MailChimp, I'm going to use the same domain, but I'm going to use different subdomains so that I can set up different DMARC policies. MailChimp needs a relaxed SPF policy, but they don't need to send from Google. My website probably sends from SendGrid or something similar, not from Google, so it needs different rules and policies. And instead of me getting all of those extra lookups in the SPF record, I'm going to split those out. Now, I'm also going to split those out for reputation. Transactional emails. You go to Amazon, you buy something, you get a receipt. You're going to probably open that email. You're probably not going to mark that as spam ever, because that is your email. That's what you bought. That's your tracking information. Those need to not be affected by something that might have a lower reputation. Your marketing emails. If you're sending stuff out via MailChimp or whatever, your open rate on those is probably no more than 30%. It's probably even lower than that. The chance of somebody marking it as spam is significantly higher than a password reset. So you want these in separate compartments, so to speak, so that you're not getting them affected by each other. What you want to do is you do not want password resets and receipts to be affected by marketing emails. So I split them into separate domains, separate subdomains, which means I then create a new SPF record for the subdomain and a new DKIM record for that subdomain, and then a new DMARC record for that subdomain. So you can start to do these as each one sets up. So if you're using your marketing just through MailChimp, you can just set up MailChimp, SendGrid, however it might be. This is going to help your reputation, because you want anything from your primary domain to just get delivered. You want that to go through. You don't want any issues. So I recommend all of those. Now there's a new player in town called MTASTS. For the really techie people in the group, there are some new records that you can set up. Again, they're all text records, but these require you to host a text file on a domain that is running HSTS, Hypertext Strict Transport Security, and the domain must have an SSL. The domain itself is going to be mta-sts.yourdomain. So HSTS, the browser collects a record saying that this domain always has a certificate. MTA-STS, Mail Transport Authority Strict Transport Security, says This email domain always has start TLS and strict TLS requirements in place. If you want to connect to my mail server, you must use TLS. You cannot just send clear text information. MTA STS is one of the newer players in town. And there's actually one more that's not on the slides. It's called BIMI, BIMI. Google is starting to test it out. And this is a way of having your logo, your business logo, show up on your email. So again, it's a DNS record. But what you have to do is you have to point the DNS record to an SVG logo, SVG format logo, hosted in DNS. And currently, it has to have a specific type of security key attached to it. Again, it's in testing mode, but it's going to allow you to start getting emails from Amazon and PayPal, where right inside of your mailbox, it shows the logo on the receiving email before you even open it. So BIMI is one of the new pieces. So a few resources we've got here that we can use to look things up. DMARC in particular, this allows you to check your domain and verify that these records are in place. And it'll tell you what's in place, and it'll let you view your records. But there's actually some tools that allow you to create DMARC records. So you can just put in your domain, and just go through and tell it, I want to reject. I'm not worried about sending reports. I don't want failure reports. Strict alignment on both. Same policy for subdomains, 100%, and it's going to now generate that record for us. So it's real handy for creating these records, telling us what kind of record they are, how to populate them in DNS. DMARCing is great for that. They do also have okay, fine. They also have reporting. Their reporting is kind of expensive, so I do not recommend using them for reporting. URI ports is who I recommend using for your reporting. Their pricing is not bad. For most people, you're looking at $12 a year. But it's kind of neat, because what it allows you to do is it's going to give you a list and show you records of how things are being applied as they come through. So you can see that I've got, let's make that a little bit bigger. You can see that I've got it coming from different domains. I've got it from my transactional domain, I've got it from my regular domain, and it shows you the policy that's applied, and gives and kind of rolls through and shows you what's going on. But it also collects things that are problematic. MailChimp in particular. MailChimp has that relaxed record. So you'll notice that the SPF alignment is relaxed because MailChimp always sends out using one of their servers instead of your server. If for some reason you had one that failed, it would show up over here. Let me see if I can find one that failed. I'm just looking. Perfect. I got one that failed. So if you've got one that failed, it will actually tell you how somebody tried to send it, where it was sent from, what domain they were trying to spoof, and just give you all that good information, telling you exactly what's going on, so that you have a way to mitigate some of these issues. So URI ports, that's who I recommend for auditing. Now, Hardenize, this one's really kind of neat. Hardenize gives us some extra settings. It will go through and it will look at other information on our system. So in particular, it looks at MTA STS and tells you, yeah, we found the record at the place it's supposed to be. We know that file we know that the file itself exists. It's just a text file. We know what servers are being enforced. So what this is just saying it's always going to be a secure connection to my mail server. TLS reporting is the DMARC end of that, where you end up getting an email or a message saying that it worked. So if I was to look over here, it'll actually show me my TLS reporting and tell me where they came from and how many messages and whether or not things were valid. It's the second half. And this is one of those reasons why URI ports is better than demarking, because they don't demarking only supports DMARC records. URI ports actually supports quite a few other things. If you get into the security side of your site, they support a lot of other records and reports. So Hardenize, this one is great because it will check it and it'll tell you what's supported, what's working correctly, whether it's start TLS, everything. This is one of those great systems to use. Now, MX Toolbox, this is the last one on the list that I recommend, but this is going to go out and check to make sure that your mail servers are not on any kind of naughty list, making sure that that everything is set to be delivered. So MX Toolbox, all of these are free solutions to look at except URI ports. That is the only one that is a fully paid solution. So thank you. And I'm going to start taking questions.
If anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A section. If you don't see that, it's if you hover over the Zoom screen, you should see a Q&A icon. You can click on that and it's just to the left of more. It's in the same bar as you would see chat on. But if you have any questions, now's the time to pop them in there and Eric can answer them.
And no question is too stupid. If you need an acronym to find, or if you want
no, please throw things out there. I know there's things that I probably threw out acronyms that I expect people to know, even though I know they don't.
Oh, okay. Here's a question for you, Eric. Are there any services to absolutely stay away from? One that do similar to MailChimp?
MyEmma. Okay. They may have changed, but MyEmma is very similar to Constant Contact, Aweber, etc. But what it is they do not support DMARC. And when I called them and asked them, they said, we don't understand it, so we don't support it, and we don't have any idea that we're going to ever understand it.
So, interesting answer.
Yeah. So to me, when you find a company that you want to use, just make sure that they support DKIM. As long as they support DKIM, then you should have no problems. Now, I have heard wonderful things about ActiveCampaign. I have not used them. I use MailChimp because I'm cheap. Sorry, frugal. 2,000 users, 12,000 emails a month is a great way to start out with no cost, and then upgrade to something else later on. But as long as it supports DKIM, then you're golden.
Cool. Does anybody else have any questions?
David, bounce rates and complaint rates. If somebody's complaining, I'm concerned. If my email is bouncing, I'm concerned. I go out to URI ports every morning, check what happened the day before, especially if I've sent out any kind of marketing. So I'm gonna pull up some zone files, so everybody gets an idea of kind of what a zone file really looks like. Now this would be a full zone file minus the A records, but the full zone file for a Google Apps hosted, G Suite hosted. Crap, they've changed it again. Google Workplace hosted email account. So assuming I had an A record up here for the root and www, 5 mail servers, 2 SPF records, 2 DKIM, and a DMARC. So transactional services, SendGrid, Mailgun, both are great. Amazon AWS, if you is cheaper but harder to get into. Depending upon how much traffic, I send my traffic on a lot of my sites right through G Suite, because I'm only handling contact forms and password resets, and maybe some comment notifications. So I'm looking at a couple hundred emails a month at most. So I just send those websites through G Suite. Correct. Subdomains will be separate from your domain when it comes to reputation. So for me, this is my primary. But if I come over here and I look and I add my MailChimp is actually going to use my subdomain, which then has its own reputation. Now, if you really want to separate it, you could just use a completely separate domain. But because a lot of us don't want to have 200 domains, I use subdomains. This is MailChimp's latest, plus some extra settings that I have found work best. They require these 2 CNAME records. I find that they are still using Mandrill sometimes, so I do still use the CNAME for Mandrill and the original CNAME record that they requested. And then I have my my separate text record for SoftFail, SPF, DMARC specific to the subdomain, and the DKIM key that's generated by my host, my Google, for the actual domain. So if you're using Stripe, Stripe supports this now. You can set up Stripe to use DMARC.
What are your thoughts on Exact Target?
I have never heard of them.
They were acquired by Salesforce, so now they're called something else, but they're like in the Salesforce suite.
Salesforce is a great company, but I don't know anything about their mail systems.
It's it delivers well. The user interface is atrocious, though. like using the back end of their system is
I find that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, so many things like this are designed by techies.
By engineers and not by designers.
Yeah.
But their deliverability is amazing. Like, so for instance, the company I work for is PMC. So we have companies like Rolling Stone and Deadline and IndieWire, things that, like, when breaking news hits, it needs to be delivered. Like, deliverability with those breaking news things is essential for our business. And ExactTarget does a really good job with delivering, but the user interface, it's like learning it is a task in and of itself.
I could see that.
But it's powerful, and we've written a lot of plugins that like interact with their APIs and such, that we're able to kind of connect it right to WordPress and have like breaking news be able to go through their APIs and be able to attach to what they call a data extension, which is a subset of the master list for a particular thing that people are subscribed to, and be able to send to that list and then get all the delivery reports and such within there.
Yeah, I've never used them, but I like I said, I can definitely see the clunkiness.
Yeah, clunkiness is an understatement, but but it's, once you learn it, you kind of can get around it. Cool. Thanks a ton. A great helper. I was about to buy a new domain just for marketing. Cool. You just got some praise. Great presentation. At what point did you answer this one? At what point do you start? Yeah, you did say that.
Yep.
You did answer that one. Cool. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments or anything that you want to bring to Eric? There's a lot of good stuff in this.
Hey, Jazz, happy to join everybody here tonight and talk about this. I think DMARC, while it is not perfect, it is. I mean, nothing is. It's not perfect, but I think if more of us would start to use this, the whole of the email environment would get so much less cluttered with noise. But to think about this, there was an article somewhat recently that at an RSA conference, when you looked at all the different presenters, that less than 30% of the presenters at RSA were using DMARC because they don't understand it. The federal government was supposed to convert over to a full reject policy. I think it was October of 18. And as of sometime last year, they were still only at about 30% reject policy. Asim, an MX record, mail exchanger. What it comes to, depending upon your host, that is the record that is the server itself that controls your mail. So in the case of Office 365, it's going to usually be something.mail.protection.outlook.com. And what it's going to be is it's usually going to be your domain name dash your TLD. In the case of Google gives us 5. And you really want more than one, because in case these numbers here, the 1, 5, 10, that's the priority. So this one here is the top priority one. If for some reason this one is down, it will fail over, and it's got 4 other choices. Now, Microsoft is doing theirs a little differently. They use one record. Now they've got a bunch of servers on the back end that are going to split the load and handle this. But you always want to make sure that no matter what you're doing, you have multiple MX records, whether it's on the back end or the front end.
Cool. Does anybody else have anything else to ask? Just so everybody knows, Eric attended our last meetup, our hangout, where I asked him to present at this meetup. Just so you know, we have a lot of really talented and knowledgeable folks that come to that hangout meetup, that are just there to chat shop and talk to you more one-on-one. That meetup, unlike this presentation meetup, you can share your video and audio. It's typically a smaller group. And everybody's very friendly, and we have some really great conversations. And if you have a topic that you are passionate about, something well that you want to present to our group, that's a great spot to chat with myself and Jason and Cameron, and we can get you on the schedule for doing one of these presentations. And given that everything's virtual, you're presenting to more than New Jersey in a lot of cases. We've been having a lot of people all over the country attending our meetups because of how frequently that we have them.
Mike, the Hangout meetup is November 2nd or November 9th?
It's 2 weeks from now, so
The 2nd.
It would be the 2nd. Yep. So we haven't posted it yet, but we'll post it like this week. So
David's got a question about Google and their incessant need to think for us. So a few things I do. First off, obviously, I tweak the categories because I find those tabs along the top are obnoxious, because I tend to lose messages. But I use filters. Something fierce. These filters are your friend. I mean, when you think about this filter right here, for people that are heavy Gmail users, you'll love this filter, and the ability of the changes that you can do. This is a single filter.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So you can go through and you can really tweak this thing to look for and collect things. I have one filter that does nothing but capturing tracking notifications. So it doesn't make a difference who sends it. It's all caught by one filter, and then I label it that way. This one is designed just to catch security notifications. So anytime somebody tells me that I've signed up, something's changed, I need to reset, this captures all of that. That's how I beat the AI. I find that Google likes to think for me, and unfortunately, they're not thinking the way I want them to.
I've been seeing an increased amount of spam coming to my Gmail account. I feel like Google's not catching some of the things I would think that's as obvious as as it used to be. I don't know if
so I'm going to break this filter into two because it truncated it. So let's go. This is part one, and then this is part two. And then you just paste that in on the has the words field. I mean, I will shamelessly plug it. If anybody joins my group, I do an event specifically on G Suite.
feel free to post away.
Yeah, I even got to a point of I built my own version of Hootsuite, basically using Google and some other tools. So the website is here. The group itself this one is one group and this one is the other. I do the more technical on the Ninja. I do the more basic on the dot group.
Can you, after, after this meetup, do you mind putting a comment in the meetup itself with a lot of the information you've been putting in the chat here, just for people to refer back to?
Yeah.
And also, the people that signed up will also get email notifications for that, and they'll be able to.
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah. Perfect. Got another one. At my work, our email get sent out from Office 365 to Barracuda Networks ESS. Is there anything different we need to be doing?
Well, let me ask a question. Do we have anybody here that works for Microsoft, or can I put my unbiased opinion in here? Don't use Microsoft. Their customer service is terrible, and they're making it too hard to use true security on your logins. Okay. Realistically, no. Barracuda is a great solution. I don't know how to do DMARC with the Barracuda, but definitely look into making sure that you can do DMARC with the Barracuda. And if you want to pick my brain about this, my email is in the chat window. I won't post that into the notes, into the notes on the event, but feel free to email me, and I'll help you look into it. DMARC is great. I think everybody needs to use it, and the Barracuda is a great solution.
Eric is also had registered in the meetup itself, so you could also message Eric through meetup.
Yes.
Meetup if you forget his email address in this chat window.
Well, it does appear that yes. So let me do that. Let me just repaste some stuff because it does look like I had all panelists only.
Yeah, that drop down is.
Well, you know what it is I'm not a Zoom person. I get onto Zoom normally. So yeah. So here's my email.
They've made it more confusing since demand has gone up and security holes have become
There's
obvious.
my groups.
Oh, and rebase the filter too.
Yes. That one's going to take me just a sec, because I want to make sure I get those to go correctly. Yeah. See, normally when I join a Zoom, I'm not on one of these panelist things. It's just kind of a free form. So it just tells me everyone.
I'm gonna post this filter in our Slack.
And actually, I believe, again, I don't know Slack. I think I joined it.
Oh, cool. I'm not going to post your email address in there, but I'm going to post to your.
Right. No, but I'm saying I think I joined the Slack. So if people want to hit me up there,
I can tell you in a second. If let me see. You did. So okay, Eric is cool. In the Slack.
Hey, look at that. Meetup, while the website's a little clunky, Meetup has made this so easy, especially over the last 600 months that we've been at home. I was in Cambridge, England last week. I'm going to be in Sydney, Australia on Wednesday night. Will out of Sydney does a great little quickie thing. It's like a 30-minute thing, 10 o'clock at night, and it's on YouTube. Cambridge, I've joined Cambridge a few times. I've joined London a few times. I've joined London once or twice. I'm going to be in Nova Scotia later this week, attending one of their events. There's just events all over the place. David, that's here, has an event coming up, which I recommend everybody join. He's going to talk about security, and he's one of the few people that knows more about security than I do. Hey, Jazz, I am glad you made it. It's definitely a late night, but I so appreciate when people come out to these events. whether it's to hear me or hear somebody else. I mean, it's a great community, a lot of great information, a lot of great groups. I mean, I joined this group last month, and I'm like, cool. You guys got stuff I don't get here in Dallas, and don't get in San Jose. And
yeah, we've been putting especially since COVID started, we've been putting a lot of emphasis in our Slack groups and trying to be. I mean, when we were meeting in person, we were very regular. Our group was, but with the Slack group, we've been trying to tie all of the New Jersey groups together in one Slack group, since there's a lot of overlap between the Jersey groups, and just supporting each other.
So we could reach out to Jersey, England, and have them join us too.
We could. They'd still fit in. But we have 4 New Jersey groups. We're in North Jersey, in a town called Montclair. So we have our group. We have another group that's about a half hour from us. Another group that's maybe half hour from us in another direction, and then another group that just started that's more central to the state, that's about an hour south of us. So we've been trying to bring all these groups together, promote all the groups, get a lot of Jersey meetups going on, and hopefully when COVID's over, we still have a lot of these. We still have some virtual meetups, and we still have a lot of the community that we've been building, since this all started. But it's been really cool getting a lot of people, getting people from all over the country joining our hangouts and presenting. Something that we wouldn't have really explored too much if we weren't forced to go online with everything. But Eric, I really appreciate you giving this presentation tonight. I think you can tell from our chat window that everybody's been loving the content that you've been and information you've been providing to them, and answering their questions. Had a lot of great questions. Everybody, thank you for these presentations are definitely more interesting when you have questions, and we have the presenter is able to answer them for you right there. Yes, there will be a recording available. As you can probably guess, my name isn't Pam Ungst. This is her account. She runs the Morris County group. They meet on a Tuesday every month. So if you haven't signed up for them, you should check them out as well. But she has been kind enough during this pandemic to let us use her business Zoom. So we're able to use these presentations and such with her Zoom account. But she will be sending me the recording when she gets it. And then when I get it, I will post it in our Slack and in the meetup itself. But yeah, if anybody,
so
has
just to recap and to follow up, our next meetup is in 2 weeks, November 2nd. There was a hangout, a WordPress hangout, where everybody gets to talk, everybody gets to watch, everybody gets to share their video. And then following that, 2 weeks later is going to be our November session, which we do not have a speaker yet. So if you are interested in speaking or presenting, just like Eric did tonight, please reach out to Michael, myself, or Jason, or jump on the Slack group and ping one of us, and we will talk to you about what your session is and help you get it ready for the November session.
One last thing I want to just bring up as well, in our Slack group, we recently brought in a new channel called Networking. So you can find the channel Networking in our Slack. And what that is, it's an application in Slack that if you are part of that channel, it will team you up with someone else in that channel to set up like a quick little networking video they'll ask you to schedule with this person and have some icebreaker things to kind of get the two of you to set up a Zoom call or whatever you feel comfortable chatting with that person. But we have like 10 people in that channel right now. And so far, like everybody that's been in that channel has set up their networking calls. And I've learned a lot from all the different people in our community, and just being teamed up one-on-one with someone, and seeing what they're working on and what they're struggling with, or what they've done. And it's been really, really cool. And I encourage anybody that's interested in networking or getting to know people in our community to join that channel and get teamed up with somebody to set up a one-on-one call with. But I think that that feature has been really cool, and it's been everybody that's joined it has told me that it's like a really positive thing. So I encourage you, if you're into Slack, to join that channel. It's just called networking, and all you have to do is just join subscribe to just join that channel, and you'll be included in that. Cool. So we're at 8:17. Typically, though we say these things go to 9 o'clock. Usually the presentations end a little after an hour. Hold on a second. But
hey, I'll keep taking questions if people got them.
Yeah, if people still have questions, keep asking.
So I'll pull up another zone file. I'll pull up one that's actually a live one, give you an idea of what you really end up with when you start to go with multiple sending domains and really full on. So let's do it. Let's do a shorter domain. Let's do one that's not quite as bad. There we go. So here's one that's doing sending from the root, sending from Stripe, sending from MailChimp, and sending from the website. So when you talk about that MTA STS, you've got to host that record in 3 different places, one for each subdomain that you're sending from. But when you start adding in Stripe, anything with a .s is Stripe. So it's got several C names. The .e is for MailChimp. Again, some more Stripe. And then because I send from 3 different subdomains from Google, I actually have to list the MX records 3 times, one for each subdomain. This is one of those ways that you can do an IP range. You can just do an IP4 and then do just do an actual range. So when I set up my selectors for DKIM, I like to use the year, month, day, so that it's an easy way for me to go back through and clean it out and know which ones are accurate and which ones need to be updated. Sometimes you'll actually get an extra one from your host. But see, since I've created those subdomains, I actually even do DKIM keys for each of those that will always fail, so that I know that that nobody's sending email from subdomains that should never have email sent from. So you also see that the SPF records for those different domains. And again, MTA, STS, if you're doing all the records, you end up having to duplicate everything down there as well. But a bonus that I recommend everybody look at, CAA records. What certificate authorities can issue a certificate for your domain? So you can really start to get a lot of stuff in here when you start to send from multiple different subdomains.
Awesome. Cool. No one has any other questions?
I guess I wore everybody out.
Yeah, it's getting kind of late, so. But Eric, thank you again for presenting.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hope to have you again at some point. Definitely was a very well received presentation. So maybe at some other point we can have you present again.
Sounds good.
Cool.
I'm always happy to come back and share my information.
Awesome. Well, hope to see you at a future Hangout as well. And everybody else, again, in 2 weeks, we'll have our WordPress Hangout. And that is just open for everybody to kind of chat and, a lot of fun. So Eric, thanks again. And everybody have a great night. I'll post a recording, when I get it from Pam, and you can all watch it again. Cool. Thanks again.
Great. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody. Bye.